So how do you live a life that you want to live when you have nothing or anyone? Life sometimes can be full of tricks, and if you don't have anything or anyone to support you, it can be incredibly difficult to get out of a nasty place. Now, there are many places on YouTube where you can find information of how you can improve your social life, your finances, etc. But all of these resources will leave you with an emptiness inside because you know that it's just not as easy for you. We all have different things that we struggle with. We all have different backgrounds. And it's just not fair to simply think that by watching a video, you can just fix your entire life. There are just too many factors that can influence how and when you achieve the things you want to achieve. Now, don't get me wrong, there are many different ways that you can define a good life, and we can get all philosophical, but we're going to leave that for future videos. In this video, I want to address how you can get started. Joe, so to give you an introduction of myself, I'll tell you some things about me, and I'll leave this format unedited. If there are some noises in the background or I don't sound 100% clear throughout the video, I want to leave this as it is and as natural as possible to feel that it's a conversation. The purpose of this channel is sort of to give the advice I would have wanted to hear in my younger self. So, without any further ado, let's get started. My name is Mike. I am a student in the medical field, and I am in my early 30s. I have a baby face, but I think I have been able to accumulate more wisdom than my face allows me to show. So I myself had to fight to get to where I am today, and it was not easy with the lack of resources, with the lack of support from people. So basically, if you're in a similar spot, I understand. And I want to tell you that it's not going to be easy. And there are many ways that you can go about it. There's no single right answer. And you don't have to live a life that social media would be proud of you, to be honest. A lot of the times, living simply is the best and most peaceful life you can live. The addition of social media has created unrealistic expectations in our society, which frankly don't help with establishing a goal of what you should strive for. But generally speaking, there are some things that we should all have. For example, enough access to food, healthcare, and social things like love and belonging. But achieving these things are not easy in our culture. If you come from a place of poverty, it's hard to escape that vicious cycle. Like, where do you start? Do you get an education first? Do you work? Do you start your own business? And if so, in what? Do you first start with establishing your purpose? What is the first step? Knowing this is probably the hardest thing that you'll face in your life. Without that, you'll feel lost and won't have any direction. But there's no right answer. You can start anywhere. But if I were to do it again, here's how I would do it. First, I would establish what my short-term goal is and go from there. Finding a purpose can be helpful for this, but it's not as easy as it sounds. And it can change throughout your life. You don't have to have a fixed purpose. So, to simplify this, I would give you a template, I would call it, of what I used to create meaning in my life. I would simply say that there is no purpose, there is no meaning in the universe, and start from there. Now, this can lead to a negative perception of the world, almost like a nihilistic view, but this sort of frees you to be free and create your own purpose. Now, this purpose usually will revolve around helping others, simply because we need others to develop consciousness. Without others, we simply wouldn't have an inner voice. We wouldn't be able to develop societies and so on. So, how do you help others then? In my perspective, helping to decrease the suffering in all sentient beings, but especially humans, is what gives me purpose. So, there you go. If you need a template for meaning, do something that reduces the suffering of others. This can be medicine, finances, teaching, etc. Find what appeals to you. You can take this template and update it and do what you wish of it. But I found this to be helpful after many books and videos and research of just what meaning is. To be totally honest, that's not the hardest thing to answer. That's just the first step. So after you have this, then you figure out how you're going to use it for your short-term goal. The second template that I've used and that I would use again if I were to do it, all of this again, would be to use education. Now, I understand that you don't need education nowadays to provide for yourself and your family financially, but it's a great template. Sort of serves a purpose like religion did to our ancestors to create morality. We use education as a means to provide financial resources for our lives. And I believe that education is still the best and simplest way for us to achieve that. You can open your own business, you can do pursue all other avenues, but realistically, education will be the most accessible way for someone to escape poverty. Now, how we go about this is important. We don't need a prestigious university. We don't need a fancy degree. We need something that will equal real results, that will give you something tangible that you can use to make money. Now, as of recent years, a lot of technical positions such as plumbing, electricians, mechanics have been in huge demand. So if I were interested in any of those things, sort of like blue collar jobs, I would go with that. I would perhaps go to a technical school and learn how to be a mechanic and go from there. Maybe after getting that education, you can open your own business and keep going. But that would be the first step. If you want to pursue other avenues, for example, healthcare, unfortunately, you will have to go further education. And that will be a cost that you'll have to be okay with. You'll have to be okay with going to school for many years and delay the gratification in order for you to achieve that. But if that's goes along with what you want for your purpose, then go ahead. Just know that there is a opportunity cost, as with anything in life. Now, you've established that you need education, you have a purpose. How do you go about pursuing an education without getting in life-altering debt? Number one, you can go to a community college or technical college, which I mentioned earlier, and that can provide you excellent education. I myself went to a community college for my first 2 years of education, and I believe that it gave me just as an equal education as other institutions. So definitely take advantage of that. And within those schools, there are many scholarship opportunities, especially for individuals with lower economic resources to pursue education in a more cost-efficient way. Now, if you add other factors, such as being part of a minority or being part of, uh, other marginated groups, then you have more opportunities to pursue scholarships. So that would be a way to manage the costs of education. Another way can be to take the non-traditional approach and work a job that allows you to save some money for you to be able to pay for school. But in any event, education will be the priority, and having a lower amount of debt would be a close second priority. So now we've established three things to get out of a rut, to get out of poverty, to start to get our engine running. Number one, creating a purpose, which allows you to, number two, get an education, to number three, possibly start making some money. Now, I'm not saying that this will be easy or simple or quick. In fact, it may take multiple years and results may vary. Life happens. People get in trouble. People have obstacles. People develop conditions physically, mentally. And that's just part of life. So in addition to developing an inner strength, which we'll cover later, we're going to have a plan, which is what I'm trying to help you with. And again, this is a template, and this is not an end all be all solution for everything. This is just something I would have liked to hear when I was younger. So after these things, we can cover other factors such as transportation, food, clothing, things that we'll need to finish that education so we can get to the next step, which leads us to finances. Now, there are a lot of financial channels on YouTube that tell you how to invest, how to do many things, teach you about credit cards, and just a lot of many other things. The simple answer is that you don't need all of that when you're getting started. If you're unable to eat, if you're unable to afford transportation, you're just not going to care about credit cards or investing or any of that. So what's the main point? So we covered a little bit about one, which is keeping costs low. How do you keep costs low when you need to drive a car to get to the place where you're going for school, or you're going to the place that you need to work to get money? Unfortunately, this will require some pain and growth. You will require to learn skills. You'll need to work with your hands. So the honest truth is that for transportation, which will be the number one thing you will address in this financial aspect, is that you'll need to buy a piece of crap car. Go with a Toyota if you can. I myself drive a 2002 Toyota Corolla, which I've had since 2017, and I could afford a much fancier car, but driving is a tool. A car is a tool. We don't need to look fancy doing it. Now, being safe is a priority, but besides that, how you look doing it doesn't really matter. So I would recommend to expand your social circle. I myself, when I needed to fix my car, I went to friends who knew about more than cars than I did. And if you don't have friends that know about cars, I recommend that you start looking for friends that have different skills. So make friends with people that have the skills that you need to survive, really. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be materialistic and just have friends to use them. Of course, you'll need to have a friendship first, but trying to expand your social circle to those individuals will be greatly helpful. And you'll need to be willing to learn. Changing parts in an old car is not that difficult. It can be painful at first because you have no idea what you're doing, but it's doable. There are resources, there's the internet, and you can do those things, even if you are not successful on the first attempt or second. In addition to transportation, we'll cover food. When I was in high school and college, there were many times where I couldn't afford to, you know, cover food costs. So what I did was I would volunteer at food pantries that allow me to gather some items after the day's worth of work. And this might not be an option for every place in the US, but I believe that there are food pantries in most cities, most places. Now, many of the items are donated, and some of them might even be slightly expired. But if you know about nutrition and food, you know that they're non-perishable items that can be consumed even after the sticker expiration date. So this would be a way that I would hack food costs. There are other ways as well you can go about it. If you are in the lower socioeconomic level, applying for food stamps is also an option. There's no shame in that, as long as you're willing to keep on going and be self-sufficient in the future. I think it's a tool that should be used because it's provided. After this, it would be living costs, probably the biggest expense that we're currently facing with all the inflation costs. And this will be a little bit harder to tackle. But unsurprisingly, it would mean to have to share a living situation with other people. The more, the better. And again, you have to be careful of the people you live with. But having roommates can decrease those costs. Now, I would ideally want you to live in a place close to a education institution. College students, although annoying, tend to be less malicious than the general population from my own experience. So this allows you to have also a camaraderie with your roommates and a lot of times find a cheaper place to live. So if you're younger, and are close to a teaching institution, that would be the ideal place. After we've covered all these things, well, there's also clothing, which similarly to food, I would go to a resource such as Goodwill or even flea markets. I used to buy things from flea markets before, and there are many places that sell used clothing that are very reasonably priced and good quality, in addition to places like Ross that provides with quality items from brands like Nike and Calvin Klein at very reasonable prices. I still shop at Ross. So that would be a way to hack that. And that about covers the main things you need to survive. There are other things, other costs such as healthcare and all those things, but I think for now that's quite enough for a person to start thinking about their plan. Insurance, healthcare coverage can also be not that hard to obtain through the healthcare marketplace. And sometimes they can be subsidized and can be fairly cheap and even sometimes free. So I think that about covers basic necessities. Now, the next step would be to eventually go to a working place, finding a job. And again, the way I would approach this is to find a job that is hiring and wants me. I wouldn't be picky, even if it wasn't on the thing that I studied, but just getting experience is enough. But if you studied one of the degrees that we've talked about before, such as plumbing or auto mechanics, you'll really have no hard time finding a job. Now, this job doesn't have to be forever, but it can allow you to learn the skills that you'll need to expand your career. Ideally, you will want to open your own business. That's ultimately the answer to true freedom. But that requires years of experience. And the most successful way to do that is to work for someone else because they already know what they're doing and learn from them. And this is where we go to learning from mentors. There's a lot of YouTube channels that talk about learning from mentors and all of that, but a mentor doesn't have to be a billionaire that teaches you how to make billions of dollars. It can literally be a mechanic with 10, 15 years of experience, the owner of a shop that hired you to work at their place. That is a mentor that can teach you things. Now, after all of this is done, it's probably been a few years since you've been through this grind. You're probably in your mid to late 20s and going to the next phase of your life. Now, this is very important. Who you marry or who you choose to be in a relationship with, in a romantic relationship with, will determine the second half of your life, whether that is a success or whether that is a failure. That is a very important decision to make. By this point, you've been working on yourself. You're probably, if not good looking, you're probably in a place where you're successful in general terms. You have made a life for yourself, and that can make you attractive to a lot of individuals. But your decision to be with someone shouldn't be on physical attraction alone. Yes, there's a component that needs to have physical attraction, but that shouldn't be the primary motive for your decision to be with someone. It should be who they are as a person, what they have as morals, what their values are. So I would encourage you not to make this decision lightly. Take your time, gather the data, get to know the person. Along with this, it's sometimes hard, and I empathize with this, to be alone for a long time. And this is where we get into mental health. You will need to work on yourself. Yes, a lot of the early years will be spent grinding and not really thinking about that. And that's okay. In the order of needs, having the things to actually be able to live and are necessary are priority number one. If you don't have food, if you don't have shelter, if you don't have basic needs, you won't live. So I'm not saying that it's okay to go without the proper mental health, but sometimes something will need to give. And unfortunately, sometimes you'll have to carry the baggage with you until you're able to tackle it. But I encourage you to tackle it at some point. If you are the person that this video is tailored for, someone that comes from a lower socioeconomic status, without little support, you're probably going to have an emotional baggage. And you'll need to work on that, on your traumas, on the many different things that made you who you are, for the good things and the bad things. But addressing that will make a huge difference in your life, especially when it comes to meeting that someone special that you want to spend the rest of your life with or want to choose as a partner. So I would encourage you to do that prior to making long-term decisions with someone else. By this point, we've covered a lot of different factors that give you a template of how you can approach the early parts of your life. I understand that the YouTube format doesn't allow you to have longer duration videos, which is the reason that I'll keep making videos talking about the many different aspects about this template that I'm talking about. But as for now, I think we've talked about a very concise little plan that can allow you to get out of this rut, get out of this dark place. And it is definitely something I would have liked to hear when I was younger. So if you liked this plan, if you like this conversation, tune in for the next time, probably next Sunday. I don't know at this point. I'm just doing this for fun. But I hope that you're doing well. I wish you the best of luck, and I want you to succeed. Until next time.